Damon called Thomas once again. Thomas had been anticipating the call. He was eagerly waiting for Damon's instructions on who to start action against.
Don't you worry about anything, Mr. Hemsworth. This sort of thing is right up my alley. I'm not sure whether you know that the Serafino family made a lot of money in the early days by giving out loans, and I was the one responsible for collecting the monthly payments.
He explained, chuckling.
I'll get to liquidating the Laurier family's assets immediately.
Thomas made it sound as though it was a simple transaction. He had a team of various professionals who had the capability of destroying a country at the Serafino family's request. Bringing the Laurier family to its knees would be a piece of cake. Damon knew he had many tricks up his sleeve.
No one in Hillwood has any idea what's about to happen,
he thought. Enzo had a cold smile on his face as he put his phone down after Damon's call. Several men in suits hovered in the background.
I can't believe you had the gall to threaten me, Damon.
He thought with a laugh.
I don't think you understand just how powerful my family is.
He lifted a hand and clicked his fingers at one of the men.
Get in touch with Teresa Vandergelt and tell her that she and her sister will be spending the night with me,
he instructed with a smirk.
If they do everything I ask and I enjoy their company, I'll sell them this piece of metal for $5 million.
He burst out laughing. He knew he was pushing his luck, but deep down, he also knew the Vandergelts had no choice but to accept and do as he said.
I have the arrogant Teresa eating out of the palm of my hand,
he thought gloatingly. Enzo was confident that she would do anything to save Blue Sky Pharmaceuticals after all she had done to build it into such a successful company.
She won't want all her work to be for nothing,
he thought. He also knew that if she was exposed as a fraud, the entire Vandergeld family would be implicated in the process.
She'll do anything to avoid that,
he told himself happily. He sat enraptured as he imagined how it would feel to have a couple of beautiful Vandergeld women at his beck and call.
That's what I'm talking about,
he said out loud to no one in particular.
That's the kind of life I deserve.
Enzo had always enjoyed manipulating and humiliating any woman who dared to cross him. Meanwhile, Teresa couldn't believe her ears after the call she had received from Enzo's assistant. She stood in stunned silence. She knew what Enzo wanted and felt she had no choice but to comply with his demands. Her family was in an extremely compromised position, and she hadn't had time to gather her wits and put a plan together. Tiffany woke up in the university's hospital and tried to get out of bed.
You can't get up yet,
the nurse explained as she gently pushed her back against the pillows.
The intravenous drip hasn't been in your arm long enough.
Tiffany looked confused but ignored the nurse as she silently pulled the needle out of her arm. She got out of bed and left the ward, still ignoring the nurse's pleas. She knew that something bad was about to happen to her family and wanted to get home as quickly as possible. In the hospital corridor, she bumped into Abigail, who was returning from the vending machine.
What are you doing?
Abigail furiously demanded as she did a 180 and tried to catch up to her friend. But Tiffany didn't slow down. As she reached the hospital's entrance, she bumped into Damon, who was there to check in on her. She eyed the bag of snacks he was carrying, but he didn't attempt to offer it to her. Tiffany felt uncomfortable when she saw Damon, and she started to cry.
Damon, I'm sorry you had to pretend to be my boyfriend at the party. Looking back, I'm sure that was humiliating. But why did you do this?
She sobbed as tears streamed down her face. Her body was racked with sobs, and anyone seeing the crying woman would have felt extremely sorry for her. Before Damon could say anything, Abigail pitched up. She glared angrily at Damon as she linked arms with Tiffany and tried to drag her away from him.
I told you to stay away from him.
She reprimanded her friend.
How many times do I have to tell you that he's a douchebag?
Abigail's berating only made Tiffany feel worse, and she cried even louder.
I'm sorry,
she blubbered, trying to apologize to Damon once more. She then freed her arm from Abigail's grip, turned around, and ran down the street. As she ran, her mind filled with regrets.
I shouldn't have let myself get so close to him. I should have been careful and not cut myself after staying up all night trying to learn how to fold stupid paper stars.
She berated herself silently. Damon felt utterly surprised and useless because he knew Tiffany had misunderstood him, but it was pointless trying to defend himself at that moment. As soon as he had the original piece of metal in his hands and had collected the money from Enzo's family, he would explain everything to her.
Hang on. Perhaps there will be no need for me to explain it all to her. I'll let the Laurier family do that. I'll make sure they do,
he thought. Tiffany's phone rang as she left the campus grounds. She thought it was Damon, so quickly answered. To her frustration, it was Enzo.
What does he want now?
She wondered, feeling irritated.
Tiffany, come to the Laurier Hotel tonight.
He instructed arrogantly. Confused, she looked at the screen of her phone to confirm it was Enzo who was speaking to her so rudely.
If you want to save your family from disgrace, I suggest you dress in something sexy. Oh, and before I forget, bring your sister as well.
Then, he ended the call without letting her say anything, showing her utter disrespect. He didn't care that everyone thought she was a goddess. To him, she was someone to be played with. Tiffany started to tremble uncontrollably and sat heavily on the ground. She felt as though she carried the troubles of the world on her shoulders. Damon left the hospital grounds and headed to the canteen. When he got there, he looked around for Melanie, but she wasn't in her usual place and was nowhere to be found. The canteen was empty. He went to ask the chef whether she had seen Melanie that lunchtime because she was the only person in the canteen who knew how to communicate with her.
Have you seen Melanie today by any chance?
The chef shook her head.
No. Strangely, I haven't. It's peculiar because she's usually the first in line.
Damon also thought that was strange.
Okay, thank you. Maybe she's not feeling well today,
he suggested. He hung around for a while, and students came and went, but no Melanie. He decided to call her, but there was no response. Starting to feel uneasy, he scrolled through her recent text messages. Even though he was an early riser, she usually got up even earlier and would send him a message every morning as his alarm went off. Damon, get up. It's time for breakfast, was that morning's message. Damon, you big fool. Get up and get ready for breakfast. Another read. Damon, you were almost late yesterday, so get up early for breakfast today, was one from a few days before. He couldn't quite put a finger on how he felt about her and the messages she sent him every day without fail. But he had taken to seeking her out and treating her with respect at every opportunity. To him, she was like a sunflower that bloomed and followed the kindness he had shown her. But he knew she was afraid of what others would say when they saw how wonderfully he treated her because she didn't think she was worth it. As he stood there pondering what to do, he recalled the words of a small note that she had written for him to read. My love for someone is as minute as a speck of dust, but it will still bloom into a flower. He dialed her number once again, but there was still no response. He wasn't going to give up, so he kept redialing for over 30 minutes as he tried to hold his panic at bay. Eventually, his call was answered with a squeak on the other side. He breathed a sigh of relief.
Melanie, why didn't you come for breakfast or lunch today? I bought you enough snacks to last you a month. I bet you haven't seen this much food in your life.
He let the relief finish washing over him and continued.
The canteen is closed now, but don't worry. I can take you out for some food if you're hungry. I've never actually told you how much money I've got, but believe me, I've got more than enough.
He was so excited that he didn't realize he had let on more than he should. He became more and more animated as he spoke. After he eventually stopped talking, he realized that Melanie hadn't said a word.
Melanie, why aren't you saying anything? Are you angry? Oh gosh, I'm such an idiot. I forgot that you don't speak. Please text me.
The last thing Damon expected after he finished talking was to hear Melanie burst into tears on the other end of the phone. Her sobs sounded as though her heart was breaking. It was the first sound he had ever heard from her, and it was gut-wrenching for him. He dropped the bag of snacks and gripped his cell phone with both hands.
Melanie,
he whispered.
What's wrong? Why didn't you come to breakfast this morning? Where did you go?
Again, there was no response, but her sobbing got louder.
What the hell is going on?
Damon clenched his fists as he roared. Melanie's cries continued to get even louder, as though something terrible was happening to her. Damon forced himself to get a grip.
It's okay. Just send me your location, and I'll be with you as soon as I can. I'm coming. There's no need to cry.
He had just finished reassuring her when there was an extremely loud noise on Melanie's side, and her phone died. He went cold.